I Have a Bad Feeling About This by Jeff Strand. Chapter 10. Schoolyard Pick. There was nothing more cruel, nothing more evil. By his calculation, Henry was picked last for sports approximately 45% of the time. The only reason the percentage wasn't higher was that Randy sometimes got picked after him. When a new kid named Frank had moved to a school from Seattle, Henry had secretly been thrilled because Frank had an artificial leg. Unfortunately for Henry, Frank turned out to not only be the fastest runner in the class, but a bully who liked to kick weaker kids with his artificial leg. With only 5 people to choose from, Henry didn't think it would be too humiliating to be picked last for this shelter building teams. But this wasn't how he wanted to start his new era of dominating the camp. "Stu," said Max, "pick a number between 1 and 10. 1. 1? Yes, sir. You do realize that if somebody else picks 2, they get all of the numbers between 2 and 10, right?" Stu nodded. "Henry, pick a number between 1 and 10. 2. Stu cursed. Randy, pick a number between 1 and 10. 2. Was he allowed to pick the same number? Asked Eric. No, he disqualified himself. Eric, pick a number between 1 and 10. 5? Excellent choice, but the number was 1. Stu and Henry, you're the team captains. Henry, make your first and only selection. Randy, Max glared at him. With all due respect, I think we can all agree that Randy is not your best possible option. Please explain your reasoning. He is my best friend, said Randy. And that automatically makes him the best shelter builder? No, said Henry, thankful that he had blurted out Randy's name before he stopped to seriously consider who might be best at the task, which might have plunged him into a moral quandary about the loyalty of friendship versus the end goal to be achieved. He wanted to win, but he wasn't going to dump Randy to help him achieve that goal. Only a total jerk would do that, but he was a nerd, not a jerk. Max nodded. In a survival situation, it is often more important to have people who are trustworthy than people who are competent. You don't want to share shelter with somebody who will try to freeze you to whatever might be trying to eat you. Well done. Thank you, sir. Stu, your pick. Aw, man. Stu looked back and forth between Eric and Jackie. I feel like Eric's probably stronger. Probably stronger? Asked Eric. But Jackie would take up less room in the shelter, so we wouldn't have to make the shelter quite as big. Then again, Jackie's hair would be more likely to stain the pillows unless we use leaves for pillows, in which case he would just be staining the leaves the same color that they already are. Probably stronger? Eric repeated. Hey, it's not like I've seen you two arm wrestle, said Stu. Make your pick, said Max. Okay, the person I choose for my team is, Jackie. Jackie beamed. Stay in line, Stu continued, because I pick Eric. Aw, dude, said Jackie. That wasn't a cool way to do it. Yeah, you're right. I should have been picked to Jackie. You don't get to change your pick, said Max. Okay, good. Jackie, since you are picked last, you will be given the most important task. You are now the sabotage crew. You are the sabotage crew. At certain brief intervals, you will be allowed to destroy the hard work that your fellow campers have done. Sweet. Here's how this is going to work, said Max. You will have 1 hour to build a shelter. The team that does the base job of constructing a shelter in which you could spend the night and not die is the winner. What do we win? Asked Henry. You win the gift of potentially not being dead. Also, the losing team has to make lunch. The competition begins now. Eric whispered something to Stu, and they immediately took off running. What did Eric know that Henry didn't? Was there a Home Depot nearby? Randy held the injured bird wrapped in a blue cloth and gently shook the top of its head with his thumb. We could try for an underground one if you dig really fast, he said. I can't dig really fast. A lean-to then? Sure. Do you know how to make one? I can't even visualize a lean-to, said Henry. I'm picturing something, but I think it's a teepee. We may be screwed on the lean-to idea then. Why didn't you look it up before we got here? I thought they were going to teach us survival skills. I purposely didn't look up how to build a shelter because I thought the instructor would appreciate me being a clean slate. Otherwise, I would have been like, no, that's not how Wikipedia says to do it. Why didn't you look it up before we got here? We can't turn against each other, said Henry. That's what Eric and Stu, and maybe Jackie, want us to do. We've got to work together. If we work together, what do you think the odds are of us finding a cave? Poor. I agree. Okay, so however we build the shelter, we're going to need branches. Let's get lots of branches. Randy nodded. They searched for the nearest branch-producing object, which was not a time-consuming task since they were in the woods. Henry found a tree that had at least 20 or 30 accessible branches that looked perfect for building the shelter he couldn't visualize. They didn't have a chainsaw, hacksaw, or machete, pocket knife, butcher knife, steak knife, tin can, sharpened teeth, or anything else that would help them saw off the branches. But suddenly, Henry got an idea. He walked over to where Max and Jackie stood, watching them. Sir? Yes. Can you spare a grenade, sir? Why? In a survival situation, having a grenade to blow off a bunch of branches can save you time. I like the way you think, said Max, but the criminal level of irresponsibility can only be taken so far, and I have to say no. Well, sir, said Henry, not giving up, nothing would be a greater honor than to watch you explode the branches for us. Are you patronizing me, you little puke? No, sir, I'm here to learn. Big horse and bullcrap. Jackie, sabotage their shelter. They haven't started it yet, sir. They'd be on the ground where they're going to build it. I don't have to go, sir. Forget it, then. Max looked at Henry and then cracked his knuckles in such a way to clearly send the message. Pretend that my knuckles are your neck or your spine. Either one works. Do not try to outwit me. I'm smarter than I look, and I'm smart enough to know what you're thinking. That's not very hard to do. Go on. Think it if you weren't already. Henry was already thinking it. It was extremely difficult to keep his face from giving that away. I could probably pee now, said Jackie. Nah, save it. Henry, get back to your shelter. He won't let us blow up the tree, Henry said, walking back over to Randy. Oh well. Randy had only gotten 3 branches off. They were going to have to work faster than that if they expected to win. Although Henry didn't say this because it would be interpreted as a similar comment to the "why don't you look it up before we get here" one, which had been poorly received. Randy had laid the cloth out on the ground. The bird chirped. Henry wasn't sure if the bird was offering moral support or insulting him. Henry grabbed one of the lower branches. Ow, he said. What? Nothing. You shouldn't grab the pokey part. I didn't know there was a pokey part. Henry grabbed the branch and tugged at it a few times. It wouldn't come free. Dude, are you trying to pull off the branch or are you trying to milk it? What's wrong with the way I'm doing it? You have to pull down or twist or use your foot. You really don't know how to pull off a branch? Even by my standards, that's lame. Henry had to admit that for somebody who was 16 years old instead of 3, it was a pretty feeble effort. But why should he know how to debranch a tree? He lived in a world where wood was conveniently cut for you. He had his own set of skills. After all, how many lumberjacks could? After a moment of thought, he realized that he didn't really have any skills that were out of reach for a lumberjack. He yanked the branch again, pulling downward. This was an improvement in that branch felt more likely to come off than his arms did, but it still wasn't all that productive. He worked at it for a few moments. The branch didn't come loose. He couldn't help but feel that he wasn't dominating the camp to quite the extent that he had intended. Randy pressed his foot against the branch and kicked down a few times till the branch came off the tree. Henry pressed his foot against the branch and kicked down a few times till the branch remained exactly where it was. Randy must have been working on a thinner branch, or he had heavier shoes. Henry continued to kick. He almost jumped up onto it, but knew that would not end well. Gosh darn it all to heck, he said approximately. He was getting mad, but that was good, because he needed adrenaline. In fact, he tried to think angry thoughts, like evil exists in the world, where nobody makes good chimpanzee movies anymore. Clearly, he had been unfortunate enough to pick the one tree in the forest made out of solid steel. He hoped that Max wasn't watching him, but Henry knew deep in his heart that he was. Max was standing there, shaking his head sadly, wondering where humanity had gone wrong, wondering how evolution and or creationism had come up with something like Henry. The madder Henry got, the harder he tried, and the exact amount that branch continued not to come off the tree. Henry was not a life devoid of embarrassment. This probably wasn't even Henry Lampert, his top 10 biggest moments of shame material, but still, he needed this to stop. As team captain, I've decided to delegate, he told Randy. Your job is to keep breaking off the branches because I'm less awesome at it than you are. My job is to find us a good tree to use for the shelter. Randy pointed at a large tree. That one's perfect. There might be better ones. You don't know a good lean-to tree from a bad lean-to tree. Actually, do you even use a tree for a lean-to shelter? I think I'm finally picturing one. The branches aren't leaning against a tree. Randy's face fell. You're right, and we're going to need bigger branches. Henry successfully kept his veil of eternal torment on the inside. Okay, he said, though the words sounded more like, Do you want to go see what Eric and Stu are doing? Was ripping off other people's idea okay in a survival situation? Henry started to nod, but changed his head movement to a side-to-side shaking his head. If we're going to win, I want to win fairly, and if we're going to lose, at least we lose with dignity. What dignity? Randy said. There's no dignity here. I mean the dignity of not having cheated. Maybe that's too strong a word. Anyway, I'm going to look for a... Henry did not have anything specific in mind that he was going to look for, and had hoped that an idea would occur to him between the time that he said, I'm going to look for a, and the time it was necessary to complete the sentence. Instead, he was distracted from his sentence finish when he stepped on a branch. It was a very sharp branch, but not sharp enough to go through his shoe and cause any kind of foot-jabbing injury. It was merely sharp enough to make him stumble a bit and step on a second branch. Now, big problem with the second branch was that it was shaped sort of like a garden rake. Now, if you were to attempt to use it as a rake to pick up piles of newly mown grass, it would be a very inefficient tool. You'd quickly get frustrated, possibly use some foul language if that's your thing. Snap it over your knee. The most important property that this misshapen branch shared with the garden rake was the fact that if you stepped on the curved end, it would cause the straight end to flip up at extremely high velocity. You would have a brief instant of awareness about what was going to occur, enough time to anticipate the pain, but not enough time to prevent it from happening. If you reacted quickly, you could say the part of the no, and then impact. The branch felt like it split Henry's skull in half, though fortunately, it didn't really do that. His bellow of pain caused 7 different species of birds to flee their nests. He squeezed his eyes shut and clutched at his forehead with both hands. Ow, he said. Ow, he repeated. Ow, he added. Ow, he added again for clarification. Are you okay? Asked Randy. I just got hit in the face by a branch, said Henry. I saw. It's not funny. I wasn't laughing. Are my eyes okay? I think so. Nothing's leaking. Are you sure? Open them. Henry couldn't force himself to open his eyes. His subconscious mind clearly believed that if he lifted his eyes, his eyeballs might roll out on the ground where they would be eaten by a bear. He knew this was an irrational thought, at least the bear part, but he couldn't get his eyelids muscles to cooperate. Come on, open them, said Randy. It's okay, Henry assured himself. They can't roll out onto the ground because they're attached by stalks. Worst case scenario, they got squished, and opening your eyes wouldn't have any additional impact. I think I'm going to take a quick break, said Henry, stepping away. He'd known there were trees around, plenty of them, so it should not have been surprised when he smacked into one. At this point, he began to weigh the pros and cons of bursting into tears. He didn't think Max would approve, so that was a negative. It would be difficult to convince anybody that sitting on the ground and bawling constituted a domination of survival camp. On the other hand, maybe Monica likes sensitive guys. After a moment of deliberation, he went with the don't cry like a baby option. He opened his eyes and was pleased to discover that they remained tightly in their sockets and apparently were still spheres. He was less pleased to see Max staring at him, arms folded, not appearing particularly sympathetic about Henry's level of pain. I stepped on a branch, Henry explained. I saw. I don't think I have a concussion, though. Good to hear. Max looked at him as if he wasn't a very smart person. All right, Payne, said Henry to his pain, though not out loud. I'm not going to abandon this challenge because of you. You can just bite me. Ha, 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 said his pain. You'll never overcome me. I am your master. No, seriously, bite me, said Henry. Oh, I'll bite you, all right. It's going to be a bite that hurts, because that's what pain does. I really am a geek, Henry thought. Wilderness survival tips. I hate to be Mr. Obvious, but really, the best way to survive the wilderness is to stay inside. Sure, the outdoor has some cool stuff to see and do, but is it that cool? Chapter 11. Henry and Randy stood there, looking over their completed project. Henry wanted to say something inspiring, like, it's not the worst shelter ever made, but That would not be accurate. Randy sighed. I'm sure that somebody somewhere in a different culture when humankind was first getting started built a lamer shelter. Henry didn't agree with that. He wanted to take pride in their accomplishment, but he'd seen forts made out of couch cushions that could have been better equipped to defend them from the elements. Halfway through, Jackie had been instructed to come over and vandalize it. He stared at it for a few moments and then decided that there really wasn't anything he could do to make it worse. No doubt, Eric and Sue had an amazing shelter, something carved out of marble that they had found in the woods with arches, a fountain, and a housekeeping service. Maybe we could... Randy began reaching up to make an adjustment. Don't touch it. If you touch it, you'll destroy it. We just need to breathe as gently as possible and hope for the best. The shelter began to wobble. No, Henry whispered. Wobble, wobble, wobble. Okay, time's up, Max announced. Wobble. Max walked over to their shelter and shook his head with the expected amount of disapproval. Do you two believe that this is an effective shelter? Not really, Henry admitted. Because shelters are meant to protect you, not collapse on you and cause your death. We know, said Randy. If you can't get into your shelter without wearing a full suit of armor, it's not a quality shelter. Agreed, said Henry. Max gave the shelter a light tap with his foot. It did not actually explode on impact, but it did instantly break apart into a pile of branches, rocks, and blocks of mud. If you'd been inside, you'd be dead, said Max. We understand that, said Randy. Why would you put skull-crushing rocks at the top? They were holding the branches in place, said Henry. No, they clearly were not. There's dust rising from your wreckage. Why would there be dust rising from your wreckage? I think you boys successfully made a shelter that was less safe than just dropping the materials on somebody's head. Sorry, said Randy. Is that part on fire? Henry hurriedly stomped on the burning piece with his foot. No, sir. You can't start the fire on purpose, but you can build a shelter that bursts into flames when it falls apart. It wasn't even possible by any laws of nature. The pile that had formerly been their shelter was sinking into the ground. Henry hoped that Max wouldn't notice. It's sinking, said Max. Why is it sinking? How did you guys find the one piece of unstable ground in these woods? This was a practice shelter, said Randy. Max massaged his temple as if an alien were trying to break its way out of its head. I don't even know what to say. This could be what the nervous breakdown feels like. If I didn't spend every waking moment watching for hidden cameras, I'd think I was on a reality show. A snake slithered out of the wreckage. Henry did not comment on it. I've always felt that if you're going to rate something on a scale of 1 to 10, you should stick to that scale and not try to cheat by saying something is a 0 or 11 or a negative number. But I can't call this thing a 1. I just can't. Henry and Randy, your shelter is a 0. Henry had nodded his understanding. I hate to belabor the point, said Max, but if somebody starting a magazine calls the world's most poorly constructed shelters, this would be the cover story. He pointed to the wreckage. Not a good shelter, boys. Not a good shelter at all. They walked through the woods to see if Eric and Sue's shelter. Oh my God, Randy explained as it came into view. What? Henry asked. That's 10 times more mediocre than I would have expected. Eric and Sue didn't look all that proud of what they'd built, because it looked like, but at least they hadn't constructed a death trap. It was basically just a line of branches resting along a fallen tree, though the branches had been neatly arranged. Max tapped the shelter with his toe. It did not collapse, ignite, or sink. I'd rate that about a 2, said Max. Congratulations on your victory. Oh, Chef, said Eric, poking his head into the kitchen where Henry and Randy were busy making lunch. They had the window open, but the smell wasn't airing out. I'd like to start with an appetizer of escargot, extra cheese, extra butter, hold the snail. Then a nice Caesar salad with exactly 11 croutons. For the main course, perhaps a crown of roast lamb with rosemary and oregano, some rice pilaf, and a side of pureed cauliflower. For dessert, I like tiramisu with raspberry sauce drizzled on top. Me too, said Sue. You get hot dogs and a small bag of chips, Henry told them. And I'm not going to lie, the dogs have some weird things growing on them. But if you're nice, we'll cut the green spots off the beans, said Randy. They're spreading pretty quickly, but if we cut fast, we might be able to catch the decomposition in time. If you ate each bite with a big mouthful of Coke and swallowed quickly, lunch didn't completely suck. Our next lesson was going to be about canoeing, said Max, but I can't do it. 2 or 3 of you would drown. There won't be any canoeing in the games. Everybody do push-ups instead. Psst, Randy. What? My hand's caught in a rabbit snare. How did that happen? I don't know. Help me get out. Just tug it out. I can't. It tightens every time I try. I can't loosen it. I guess that's a sign of a good snare, right? You really can't get your hand out? Shh, Max will hear you. Hurry, it's cutting off the circulation. Okay, let me see it. See? Whoa. Shh. You're going to lose your hand. No, I'm not. Max, we need a knife, quickly. No, it's not that. Oh, jeez, I'm feeling dizzy. 3 of the berries on the table in front of you are safe to eat, said Max. The 4th is not. Jackie, pick the one you think is poisonous. Jackie frowned as he looked over the selection of berries. Can I taste them first? Did you really just ask me that? Yeah, what's wrong with... Oh, right. He pointed, that one. The blueberry? Yeah. You think the blueberries are poisonous? That one might be. You do understand that people eat blueberries every single day, right? Maybe I'm misunderstanding the quiz. I thought you poisoned one of these. I didn't ask which one was poisoned. I asked which one was poisonous. If I'm training you to survive out in the wilderness, why would I ask you to identify berries that I poisoned myself? I can't give you a good answer to that, sir. Stu, which one of these berries is not edible? Stu pointed. That one. That's the blueberry. Oh, sorry, I wasn't paying attention to which one Jackie picked. That's bigger than most blueberries I've seen. How about that one? He pointed to a small red berry. Eric, do you agree? Eric leaned down and sniffed the berry. Yes, sir. Randy leaned down and sniffed the berry as well. Then he sniffed the other 3. Max slammed his fist down on the blueberry, squishing it. I wasn't picking that, Randy insisted. I just like the smell of blueberries. Do you agree with Eric and Stu? Yes. Henry picked up the berry and held it again up to the sunlight. He didn't know what he was looking for, maybe a skull or Mr. Uke, but this seemed mildly helpful. He considered squeezing out some juice to see if it sizzled his fingers, then decided against that. He put the berry back on the table. Yes, I agree. Max picked up the berry and popped it into his mouth. He chewed twice and then swallowed. Everybody stared at him. So what do you think? Henry asked. Either Max was conveying the message that they had selected the wrong berry, or they'd driven him to suicide. Probably they just picked the wrong berry. I think you're trying to fake us out, said Eric. I think you did eat the poison berry, but because it was just one of them and you're a big guy, it won't have any real effect on you. You probably spent the past couple of decades building up a resistance to... No, I take that back. I think we picked the wrong one. Max picked up a blackberry. This is called a pokeweed berry. Ink from this berry was used to write the Constitution of the United States, but it is toxic. Don't eat it. Oh, they all said as Max massaged his temples much harder than people usually massaging their temples. Henry, where's your fishing hook? Max said. I'm not sure, sir. Why is your face contorted with pain? No reason. Why is there a tear trickling down your cheek? The beauty of nature, sir. Are you hiding your hand behind your back because you don't want me to know that you somehow jabbed your fishing hook right through it? Yes, sir. Show it to me. Henry hesitated and then held out his injured hand. How did you get it to go through twice? I'm not sure. It just happened. I caught one. Jackie proudly held up his makeshift fishing pole, which dangled a very, 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 very tiny fish. Excellent job, said Max. Now, in the real world, you would throw that back and be a little ashamed to have caught it in the first place. But in a survival situation, you take whatever you can get. So go ahead and clean that fish, and we'll cook it tonight by the fire." "Yes, sir." "I think Max is really upset," Eric whispered. "It's not my fault," said Jackie. "I didn't know." "Soap, Jackie?" asked Eric. "Soap? Really? I've never cleaned the fish. If he wanted me to cut off its head and rip out its guts, he should have said, 'Hey, Jackie, cut off the fish's head and rip out its guts.' There's nothing clean about smushing your hand through a fish's stomach, right? How am I supposed to know all these fancy technical terms if he doesn't teach them to us?" "Water," said Max, "is the key to all life. I don't care if you have an 18-pound hammer in your backpack. Without water, you're doomed. But though water is crucial to your survival, you can't always expect to find cool, clear, refreshing water running through a stream. Much of the water you will encounter is laden with bacteria." He held up a gallon jug of water and shook it. "Henry, does this water look safe to you?" "No, sir," said Henry, even though the water looked perfectly fine. "Correct. Just because you don't see giant parasites swimming around in there, like brine shrimp, doesn't mean they aren't there. Water doesn't have to be yellowish or brownish green to be unsafe. This water has literally millions of parasites in there. The horrific thing these parasites can do to your insides would make the violence in your precious video games look like." He glanced at the jug. "This isn't all the way full. Has anybody been drinking this?" "I got thirsty," Randy admitted. "I didn't know it was plague water." Max closed his eyes for a very long moment. He opened them, took a deep breath, and continued. "Anyway, when you're drinking water from a potentially unsafe source, it's important to always boil it first to get rid of the bacteria." "Do we have to boil the water I've already drank?" asked Randy, his voice filled with dread. "No, Randy. Boiling water while it's inside of your body is not good for your health." "Am I going to die?" "I don't know. Probably not." "Sir," asked Henry, "I drank the water too." "Why?" "Because Randy asked me if I thought it tasted funny. It did, but we figured maybe you just put some weird flavoring in there." Jackie raised his hand. "Sir, I drank some too. They asked if I could identify the flavor." "And what did you think it was?" "Wheatgrass?" Max sighed. "Stu? Eric?" "I smelled it," said Stu. "Can these parasites get in through your nose?"
Normally I'd say no, but I think you'd find the way to make it happen.
"That's 4 feet and 8 inches, Eric announced, letting the tape measure wind back into its container. "Randy wins." "He went over the line," Jackie insisted. "It's okay if your head goes over the line as long as your feet don't." "You never said that." "That's been the rule from the start." "Then why did Henry get disqualified?" "Because he fell over." "Oh." "Does anybody else have any left?" Eric asked. "Or is Randy our official distance puking champion?"
"I've got some more," said Randy. "I think I can beat my own record."
Though Eric ruled that Andy did indeed break his own record, it was a very controversial decision, with Stu and Jackie insisting that one straight chunk did not constitute a distance of 4 feet and 9.5 inches, but that instead they had to count from where the liquid portion stopped, giving him a rather poor distance of 2 feet and 3 inches. Henry and Randy insisted that anything that emerged from his stomach was fair game. Stu and Jackie said that Randy's vote did not count, while Eric said that nobody's vote counted but his own, since he was the impartial non-participant. Jackie gave it another attempt and was disqualified for spitting rather than regurgitating. Eric's impartial nature was questioned, as was his authority to disqualify the contestants. They asked Max if he would be a replacement judge, but he declined. Wilderness survival tip. Wearing a full suit of armor while hiking will not only protect you from insect bites, but it's very stylish and comfy.